everybody, and welcome to my brand new knitting podcast. I have recently been watching a bunch of knitting podcasts and I've just been really enjoying them. So I thought I would also try and kind of contribute to that space, because I do love watching knitting podcasts, but it does strike me sometimes that a lot of them people like, for instance, the more Scandinavian aesthetic. It's a lot of kind of beige and gray and navies, and I love that, and I still love watching the podcasts, but it's not really my personal preference for what I actually want to knit. So recently I've actually come across a few more podcasts that do have a bit more of a brighter aesthetic that fits me a bit more, and I just got so excited watching them. I think one of the ones that just really inspired me, for instance, was Maker Bee. Shout out to her, she's absolutely marvelous, and watching her content was so inspiring to me that I actually wanted to give it a go myself. And even if just a few people see it, I would just love to reach some of the people like me that love knitting but do really enjoy kind of like a brighter aesthetic. But me, for instance, I have nothing against acrylic, but I personally don't love working with it so much. I love natural fibers, I love working with wool, different types of wool. I'm trying to teach myself how to spin as well, but I do love just like quite a bright and bold color palette. And you can very much see that reflected in the stuff that I make. So I would love to share some of that stuff with you today, and I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much. I'm going to start with the recently finished projects, with at the very first the thing that I finished yesterday. So it is actually still wet blocking a little bit, so it is still a little bit damp. This is the mini mock tank or top, I think. I had a lot of fun knitting this. I was really unsure on what yarn to use and what needles to use, because the pattern calls for a fingering weight yarn, and I usually only use maybe at the most a 2.5 needle for fingering weight yarn, because I love using really tiny needles usually. But this pattern called for using a fingering weight yarn and also using a 3.5mm needle. For me, that seemed really large with the way I usually like to knit. So instead of using a 3.5, I compromised and used a 3mm needle, and I used 2.5 for the ribbing that I did. And I just used all kinds of sock yarns, not necessarily scraps, because I just like to have all different kinds of little sock yarns laying around and combining them in different ways in my projects. But I combined a lot of them in this one, and I really like the way how it turned out. I tried it on yesterday and it fits exactly how I hoped it would. And I hope that with blocking it, it will only look better. And if we're very lucky, summer at some point will actually end and the heat waves will be gone, and I will start enjoying wearing yarn, potentially even next to my skin again. So we'll see about that. Next up, I knitted these very long leg warmers. I knitted these out of a, let me check because I have a new one over here as well, a Sauerball Crazy, but in a different colorway. I recently started doing ballet as an adult, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, and I also enjoy knitting, so of course I wanted to see if I could combine these two things that I really like and make some leg warmers for myself. Okay, these look really thin and kind of scraggly like this. I just did a 2x2 ribbing, which I don't love to do. I much prefer doing a 1x1 ribbing. I just knitted them in these little knitting in the round 2.25 needles. They look really thin like this, but they stretch out a lot in the width, so I was hoping that they were going to be over the knee leg warmers. But with how much they stretch, and when they stretch width-wise, you lose some of the length because the fabric needs to go somewhere, can't be in two places at once. So with how much they stretch, they actually do end up being like more slightly below the knee leg warmers, but I'm sure they'll be fine. If I ever want some over the knee ones, I just know that I need to knit them even longer, but I don't know if I'll do that in the 2x2 ribbing again, because for me that is not a very comfortable way to knit things. But I'm sure I'll enjoy these very much, because these have all my favorite colors in them. I love the pinks and the lilacs. and I think I'll really enjoy wearing them to ballet class. One of my other recently finished projects are these absolutely adorable little colorwork, two-stranded colorwork mittens. As you can see, they have the little moon phases over here, and then they have the moths with the little two-color wings. The orange is actually done by using duplicate stitching, so you avoid doing three-stranded color work, which is a little bit more yarn to keep track of than is usually super comfortable. The underside also looks super cute. It was not necessarily a very complicated pattern to keep track of, but it's involved knitting in a way where I would say you have to constantly stay really focused on what you're doing, and you have to stay focused on each line of the color chart basically, because for just each stitch you have to be careful and mindful that you're using the right color in order for the pattern to come out correctly. But I'm very happy with them, and I'm really excited to start wearing them once the weather cools down a little bit. Here they are on. They're just really cute, really darling, really soft as well. I used the pink is a sock yarn that I used, and the purple is a superwash, and in this case the way the superwash stretches was actually really helpful to make the stitches after all the color work, because sometimes the stitches with color work can look a little puckered, but when I wet blocked them all the stitches relaxed wonderfully, and now they look exactly like I hoped they would. So that's super duper nice. I definitely recommend knitting them. They're called the Underwing Moth Mitt. I'm pretty sure. I'll put the link down below, and I really enjoyed knitting them and I really recommend it. Next up is this little cardigan that I recently made. I just kind of freehanded this. I'm still a little bit unsure on how it turned out. I think the colors are really nice, but as you can see, the neckline kind of droops down. I was hoping for kind of an open boat neckline, which I think I got, but maybe I went a little bit too far with it. I used mostly sock yarns again, and I used two different kinds of mohair held together. Because of the temperatures, I really haven't had that much of a chance to test wear it yet, so when the temperatures drop a little bit further, I have to see if I actually like wearing it enough, or if I maybe want to rip it back. I think for me, making this cardigan made me kind of realize that I should maybe focus on knitting from patterns a little bit more first before I start really freehanding a lot of things. I don't know, sometimes it works out fine, sometimes I'm not really happy with the results. This is one of those times where I'm not entirely sure if I like the garment enough to justify the yarn that's currently in there, because it is very nice yarn, and I can also envision a bunch of other things I would potentially like to see this yarn in. So I have to kind of wear test it and see if I do end up liking it enough to keep the yarn within this project, or if I want to rip it out, but we'll see. I do love the colors. And then also recently I made this little kind of granny square top. I didn't use any kind of specific pattern. I just went on YouTube to find a granny square pattern that I liked, and then I kind of modified it into a tank top by just adding these straps and adding a little bit of granny stitch on the side. This yarn, I used two different colors of yarn, which I must say, when I started crocheting with it, I wasn't quite aware of how much red was going to be in the ball that looked more pink when I started using it. I do think it looks interesting together. I am very happy that there's these like warmer yellow shades as well that, in my opinion, complement the red enough to make it kind of work nicely together. And I did brush it out a little bit after I finished it, which gives it this lovely kind of squishy texture, which is also really nice when you're wearing it, because it just feels like you're kind of just like this little squishy cloud. So this was super fun to make. It was super fast. I think I made it in just a couple of days of crocheting, and it is a type of thing you can very easily modify it to your liking. So you can make something like this with a smaller needle, with a bigger needle or hook, I mean. And with any type of yarn that you like, you just have to follow the basic principle of making a square and then making it large enough to cover the part of your torso that you want to cover, and then add the straps and the bits at the side so that it actually forms into a top. And doing a little bit of like finishing stitching, like single crochet on the edge, is always a nice finisher. I think that kind of ties the whole thing a bit more together. But I really recommend making something like this because it's just like a fun, cute little project to make. Now, speaking of fun little projects to make, this one definitely took me a bit more time, but it was still really fun. For this one, I did use a specific pattern. I think it's called the Blossom top. Again, I'll put the pattern below. It follows a slightly similar principle to the other one, whereas that you start just like with this big granny square at the back, and then you just start adding to it in order to make it into a top. So you add the crossover sections at the front, and then you make these quite long straps because it is a crossover top that you then tie in the back. And I made the sleeves a little bit different. I wanted to make a little bit more of a cap sleeve, and I didn't continue the pattern like on the bottom because I'm always a little bit worried that my sleeve is going to bunch up too much under my arm. So for when I'm knitting a top with sleeves, for instance, I will almost always use like little German short rows in order to do that type of shaping. So I tried doing a slightly similar thing in crochet where I would just do the proper pattern on top that was suggested to the stitch pattern that was suggested in the pattern, and then at the bottom I switched to doing single crochets in order to not have the top be that voluminous, which I think makes it a little bit more comfortable to wear, but that might be up to your own discretion as well. And I really liked the type of granny square that they used for the back here. In the pattern they used a bit different colors that were a little bit more muted, that I think also are super lovely and nice, and I might even want to make it again at some point in more the colorway that they used in the pattern. But for now, this was just a bunch of cotton that I just had laying around from other projects, and I think this was a super nice way to use up a bunch of those colors. Alright, this next top I was super happy with. For some reason I had a lot of trouble finding the pattern because I remember seeing it at some point on some YouTube videos. It's called the Colloseum top, and I don't know why, but when I was looking for it on Google and stuff, I think the Colloseum is maybe just like too popular a term to easily find it when it has that in the name. But eventually I did find it, and I'll be sure to link it down below as well. It is this super lovely little crochet top with a little bit of shell stitching on the edges, which I think just give it a darling finishing texture. I crocheted in these lovely shades of cotton that I really like and I think work really well together. Actually, these are two different color lots that I think I joined around here somewhere, and they blend together just absolutely perfectly, which I thought was really interesting. And I was super happy with the way it turned out. It's really comfortable to wear. It's just a perfect little cottony, airy summer top to throw on top of a dress, in my opinion. It was really fun to crochet as well, and I tried some new techniques, and I hadn't at that point crocheted that many sleeves yet, or tops with sleeves, and it was really interesting to just try it out, and I think the results are pretty cute. Next up is this little nostalgia top, I think it's referred to as in the pattern. I modified the pattern just a little bit because originally the pattern called for, I think, DK weight yarn and size 4 needles. I tend to really lean towards more a fingering type weight of yarn and smaller needles, as I said earlier. So I tried to figure out which size I could maybe use in order to modify it, because I knit this entire top on 2.5mm needles, which I really enjoyed, and I used this lovely 45% silk Ito yarn. It's really nice, especially when I was knitting with it. I thought it sometimes felt a little bit rough. It wasn't necessarily rough on the hands, but I could just feel that it didn't have a lot of give, so I got a little bit worried sometimes that it was maybe not going to actually feel that nice on the skin. But I was really happy to find that after I blocked it, and I did take care to block it with some of my conditioner that I use for my hair as well, which also gave it a lovely scent, and I think that kind of helped, and I just really kind of squished it around when I was wet blocking it. And I also just added these little moon and star buttons on it. They're not functional buttons, but I do think they're really cute, and they really give the top extra cute little touch. I am not always the biggest fan of doing lace work. I can do it. I think I definitely made some mistakes here though, which is fine. I'm fine with that. I don't think it's too noticeable. And this is also the first time where I used an I-cord cast on and cast off. So that was an interesting challenge. I think the I-cord cast on especially took me, I think it took me like 3 hours to cast on 216 stitches, because with an I-cord cast on you basically have to knit 3 stitches for every 1 stitch you're casting on, so that you get this little rolled kind of squishy little edging on it, and I think it looks really nice. I think it was worth the while. I'm also more of a process knitter than a product knitter. You wouldn't maybe say with how much stuff I sometimes tend to make, but I really enjoy the process of knitting. So this was still a little bit challenging with how much time it took, but still, because I just adore playing with yarn, I adore knitting, I adore just getting really immersed in the process of it, even though it was a little bit challenging with how long this took, and I think I definitely underestimated it a little bit. I think it was still really nice, and it was kind of just, I don't know, I think it was worth my while. Alright, so next up are a couple of things that I've actually sewn. I think I would call myself much more of a knitter than a seamstress. I do have a really nice sewing machine that I inherited from my grandmother, so I do like sometimes using it, and especially, I don't know, sometimes when you make stuff yourself, you just start having this vision in your mind of this exact thing that you want, and quite often it is hard to find it retail. Often also I think it is more enjoyable to spend more time on it and to kind of play around with it. I love playing around with design ideas in my mind. I love thinking about it. I love adjusting until I kind of have envisioned the thing that I think is going to be perfect for what I want. Does it always turn out perfect then? No, of course not. But again, I still really enjoy playing around with it. And especially for summer this year, I just wanted to make a couple of more, I think in the pattern it's called a nap dress. And they call it a nap dress because there's just no elastic in it. It is quite wide, and therefore you can just easily lay down in it and have a little nap. This is made out of this lovely like double layered gauzy cotton. I think it's really nice. This pattern really made me think of kind of like a Miss Frizzle vibe, which I think is super cute. I love wearing big dresses like this with kind of similar to what I'm wearing today, with this little, these little types of tops on top of it to kind of cinch it in a bit more and give it a bit more shape. But you don't have to. You can also just let it completely flow freely, and I think I am definitely one of the types of persons that tend to lean towards engulfing myself in more fabric when it's warmer, because I just like the feeling of fabric swishing around me when it's really warm. I think it creates more of a layer of isolation, and I much prefer sweating actually into a fabric than just sweating onto my own skin. So I tend to really go for like big, fluffy, cottony dresses like this when it's really hot. Now next, along the same lines, this is the same pattern but a different cottony fabric that I got from my local fabric store. I think I just really like the colors of this. It is very sheer and see-through, so I tend to wear a little slip dress underneath it when I do wear it. And I think it's really cute. The slip dress that I wear also has like a little edge of lace, which I think adds just a really cute detail. I love the texture of this. It just feels like lovely and crinkly. And there's something really like satisfying about having the fabric kind of like swoosh around you, and I think it's really, really cute, and I think the colors are super pretty. Lastly, in the sewing department, excuse me, these are a little wrinkly. I just really wanted to make some easy to wear little cotton trousers. Also for when it's just really hot, but I also want to kind of cover up from the sun. So that's why I decided to modify, if I'm completely honest, a PJ pants pattern, which also really doesn't kind of help the way these types of pants already tend to kind of look like PJ pants. And then I also actually did use a PJ pants pattern, but I do think these turned out really well, and when you style them properly, I think it kind of tones down the PJ pants effect that they do tend to have, and they're just super comfortable to wear. It's just this darling little gingham cotton. These are usually quite inexpensive at the fabric store as well, so that's really nice. I often struggle when making pants, and I've done this so often, but I unfortunately keep doing it. I quite often will sew the two right I will make two like right pants legs instead of a left and a right. And for people that have sewn pants before, you know, you absolutely cannot do that, because then you can't attach them to each other, because there is very much a difference between the front facing pieces and the back facing pieces. So I would love to at some point actually teach myself, or kind of finally get it into my head, that I need to be super duper careful when sewing the pants pieces together in order to do it correctly, because I have made, I think, more than 5 pairs of pants in my lifetime, and I would say maybe even, I think I've made around 8 pairs of pants in my lifetime, and I think for at least half of them I have made this mistake, and I've also done it again in my most recent endeavors. And it is just gut-wrenching to have to take your seam ripper and just rip out the entire pant leg and do it all over again. So hopefully someday I will learn, but this run was not that time, unfortunately. Maybe next time. Alright, so that was everything in the sewing department, and that were all the finished projects in general. I think these were finished projects from, I think it was a little over a month, but not that much more than a month. For me, this is really what I do to relax. It's my biggest hobby. It's the thing I spend the most time and money on. But I really enjoy it, so that is why I do tend to make quite a few things. I did make a couple of pairs of socks as well, but I don't currently have them with me anymore because they were both gifts. One of them was for one of my best friends, that she finally asked me if I would be so kind to knit her a pair of socks as well. And I did a little mental calculation. I was like, oh well, we've known each other for like 8+ years now, and she's one of my best friends. So I was like, all right. I do tend to be a little bit of a selfish knitter sometimes. I think that's really fun as well, because you teach yourself this wonderful skill, and then you can just make yourself whatever you want. But I am also starting to enjoy a little bit more sharing those skills with other people. And it's really fun because she's also one of the people that is actually really interested in learning more about it. So I was happy to give her a pair of hand knitted socks, and then hopefully it might even inspire her to start knitting her own socks maybe someday. I would love that for her. I think she would definitely be able to do it. The other pair of socks I made, I don't know if you can see in the pictures, but there's quite a big size difference between them. The other pair of socks that I knit were for my girlfriend, who is quite a bit taller than I am, so she needs larger socks as well. I'm already quite tall, even for Dutch standards, but she's even taller, so big socks it is. And I just love how also with knitting stuff and making your own stuff, you can just really customize stuff and tailor it to people's specific needs and preferences. So I really tried to kind of tinker with the way I usually make socks, and kind of add a stitch or take away a stitch in order to make it just fit really well. Also, you might be able to tell that the socks I've made for other people are just in quite a different color palette than I lean towards or tend towards usually. I do sometimes think it's a little bit harder to knit with colors that I don't love as much as the colors that I naturally tend to love, but I do also think there's something really wonderful about actually taking their preferences into account and making something that is just really tailored to them. Okay, next up, I think I'll show you my work in progress, and that actually indeed was singular. I'm not going to count languishing works in progress right now because I'm not ready to face them yet. Maybe when the weather starts getting a little bit cooler, because both of them that I have that I'm thinking of are more fall-time projects, so we might revisit them at a later date. Right now, especially after I just yesterday finished that little cropped top that I showed you, I, at this point in time, actually kind of only have this big shawl on the needles. I think I'm nearing the end of the pattern. It's a little bit difficult to show because it is, I did try to get kind of large, like knitting in the round cables so that it doesn't have to bunch up that much, but it's still going to be a little bit difficult to show. I'm nearing the end of the instructions of the pattern and I still have some yarn left, so I'm not quite sure. I'm going a little bit off pattern at the point where I'm at, because the pattern originally did not call for these little stripes, for instance, but I decided that I wanted to use a bit more of the yarn that I was working with, and I thought some stripes could actually be nice. The baseline of the pattern here is basically to make these little stitches, and you work them in by alternating rows where you slip some of the stitches from the one color and then you pick them up in a different way with the other color, and then you kind of create this little cute stitch pattern. And I'm toying with the idea because to me these colors are quite mermaidy and I think they're really nice, super adorable, and I was thinking of maybe after I finish the shawl adding some pearls to the edge of it, but I'm not quite sure I am able. First of all, I would have the patience, and second of all, if I can do it in a way where I'm not going to take away the stretchiness of the shawl, because I'd have to be careful to continuously like sew in a little pearl and then completely bind off the thread I'm using to do that, and then continue to the next one. So I'm not quite sure if I can do this in a way that is actually going to be pleasing to me. Also, the pearls I'm thinking of are quite small, so I don't know how much it would actually add to it. This yarn is super nice and squishy. I think they're both non-superwash. I think one of them is Olive and Olivia and the other one is King Fiber. They're really nice. They smell really good as well. I really like a yarny, sheepy smell in my yarn, so I've just really been enjoying knitting with this. I'm a little bit worried about the little heat wave that is coming again next week, so I don't know how much I'll enjoy having this in my lap, but we'll see. The colors are absolutely adorable and I do enjoy knitting it, but I think I am getting a little bit sick of the pattern, hence me also going off pattern here, but we'll see how it goes. I'll show you. I still have quite a bit of yarn left. They are a little bit deflated, of course, but yeah, I can basically still add to it whatever I would want, I think. And I still would have quite a bit left, so I'm even already starting to think about what to do with the scraps, because I do think both of these yarns are beautiful, really fun to work with. So sometimes I'm a little bit sad about finishing a project because I've just been enjoying working with the yarn that much. So sometimes I even kind of don't want to quite finish a project because then I can't work with the yarn anymore, which is maybe a little bit silly because when I finish it, I get to wear the thing I finished. Well, not in these temperatures, but you know what I mean. We'll see. We'll see how it goes and when I'll finish it. So next up, I would like to show some of the things I have recently acquired. My friend and I recently went on a little yarn expedition to Amsterdam, mainly to visit the yarn store Stephen and Penelope that is run partially by Stephen West. Their selection is always wonderful. The yarns are very pricey, but recently I definitely needed a little bit of a pick-me-up and it was her first time going there, so I was really excited to show it all to her. We had a wonderful time. We bought way too much yarn, we spent way too much money. You always know when the yarn store is starting to give you freebies that you've probably overspent, but we had an absolutely wonderful time and I am super excited to start knitting with all these yarns. So let me just show you them. The first one you probably already saw a little sneak peek of, the Zauberball Crazy. I am definitely, I don't know, I'm just starting to get so ready for fall that I saw this and it just screamed fall to me, and I can't wait to make a lovely pair of autumnal socks with it. I think I maybe actually want to try and make knee-high socks. I think over the knee is probably a bit ambitious with how tall I am. I don't know if there would even be enough yarn in this, but I think up until the knee is probably doable, especially now that I've experimented with making the leg warmers. I feel a little bit more comfortable knowing actually how long I would need to make these socks. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm really excited to start working on that. I also had a specific plan that involved some mohair. So when I saw Stephen and Penelope advertise that they had this new West Wool glow hair, that I think, yeah, it feels really soft, so I think it would be fine for next to skin stuff, because I can sometimes be a little bit sensitive towards mohair type yarns. I have specific plans for this. I think the colors look super cute together. I don't know, I might partially use them together, but I have some other mohairs as well that I kind of want to combine them with, but I'll talk more about that in the plan section of this video. Next up is this delicious slime green looking undercover otter sock yarn. I don't know if I'll put it into any socks. I do have some plans that involve combining this with a lovely more muted pink shade and the green glow hair that I just showed you. So I think it's going to be wonderful, and it just feels so nice and squishy. Another one from Undercover Otter. I really hope you can see it a little bit. I'll try and show you. I hope the lighting is alright, but at first glance it looks like just a cream colored sock yarn, but it actually has some wonderful neon specks in there. This one is in the Jamie Lee colorway. The green one, I actually forgot to say, it is in the Deadite color. Both of these are absolutely adorable. This one I kind of got specifically with the idea of, I sometimes do colorwork socks as well. And because I like bright colors so much, I don't really have many sock yarns that are a more neutral base to kind of give the colorwork a chance to shine, like you saw with the Underwing mittens that I made. It's kind of all brightly colored, so this with the little neon specks in it felt like potentially a good compromise for me to give my colorwork socks a bit more of a neutral base to shine. So we'll see how that goes. I don't have any immediate plans for this to cast it on. I just knew I really wanted something like this in my collection because I'm hoping for the fall season I am going to feel more inspired to start making some colorwork socks again, but we'll see when I get to it. Next up, this one has almost all my favorite colors in one skein at once. So it has some lovely pink, purple, lilac, and some yellow for a lovely contrast in there. The brand is called Life in the Long Grass. This is their merino high twist sock with 100% superwash merino yarn. I've not yet used a sock yarn that doesn't have nylon in it. I do understand that by twisting the fibers more, it's going to be more durable. And because I use such small knitting needles, I do feel like my socks are usually quite sturdy. So I would definitely knit this on a 2.25 millimeter needle. And I do think, I don't always use my sock yarns for socks. I love using it for other things as well. This, I am leaning towards making socks with it because I have not made that many brightly colored, like taller socks. I've made some cute little brightly colored summer socks out of yarn or out of wool, but I haven't really taken the time to make many more brightly colored, taller socks. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see when I get to it. Oh, and this is in the colorway Virtual. I think it's absolutely delightful. I can totally see myself making something else with this as well. Maybe a little shawl or something, but we'll see. I just really adore the colors and I'm really excited to knit it up into something wonderful. I don't think I'll post this before my girlfriend's birthday, or I'm going to explicitly tell her not to watch it. So I think we'll be in the clear. But I did also get my girlfriend a couple of yarns because she also is big into fiber arts and crafting and stuff. And she has started knitting socks as well this year. So when I went to Stephen and Penelope, and knowing that her birthday is coming up, I just had to pick her up a couple of things as well. She's more in the beginning stages of starting to knit socks. So my plan is I'm going to give it to her and also offer, if you don't want to knit the socks yourself, I am also totally willing to knit them for you because I just love knitting. But if she wants to use it herself, that is also completely fine with me. As you can tell, our color palettes are very different. I would not very quickly gravitate towards a colorway like this, but I hope and I think that I have assessed her preferences correctly in thinking that this is something that she would really enjoy. The thing I do kind of enjoy about this is that there's still a little bit of neon flecks in there. This is again the sock yarn by Undercover Otter, and this is the colorway Devil Doll, which is an absolutely adorable name. And I hope she'll really like it. To complement this, I also got her 2 little mini skeins. These are from the brand Dark Omen Yarn. And she can use them however she wants, but I did try to pick colors that would be interesting to combine together. I'm not entirely sure about combining this one with this one, but I thought this one for a contrasting cuff, heel and toe could be really cute potentially, and it's up to her how she eventually wants to use them, but I hope at least she really likes the colors, and I really try to pick them with her in mind. Lastly, the store next to Stephen and Penelope, I'm afraid I don't quite remember their name, we quickly popped into there as well. I think by then we were both a little bit overstimulated, so I wasn't quite sure what I would even potentially want from there. But since I am doing ballet classes now, and I do really enjoy playing around with the clothing and the accessories that you can potentially use with that, I was interested in this very brightly pink tulle with a little shimmer to it even. I don't know how much you can see it in the camera, but it has a lovely little shimmer sheen to it, and like clearly I just instantly fell in love with this color, and my friend convinced me to purchase a little bit of it. I've made 1 ballet skirt for myself already, so I'll see when the mood potentially strikes me to turn this into a little ballet skirt as well, or something else entirely. I also just like collecting things and kind of waiting until the mood is right for me to actually do something with it. I think that's fine to kind of, I don't know, build your collection like that. Lastly, yesterday I organized a little craft evening for some of my friends, and I did tell them in the group chat that if anybody wanted to potentially trade any yarn, I would love that. For me it's easy to say, of course, because I was organizing it, so we were all in my house, so we were next to my entire yarn collection, so I can easily pull from it. One of my friends, Sisa, she read me completely correctly, and she brought this with her, and she said that she tends to use a bigger gauge for the needles, so this one doesn't really suit her tastes, and she saw it in her collection and she just thought, oh, Marije is going to absolutely love this. And she was 1000% correct. It even has a little bit of shimmer in there. I think this is beautiful. And I traded it for some lovely green skeins of yarn with a thicker weight, so I hope that she'll enjoy those. And I will be sure to enjoy these. I'm really happy with them. I don't know if it is something, I don't know if I would have seen it in a store, I don't know where she got these, but I really like them, and I think I will definitely be able to figure out something nice to make with them. Alright, luckily these are all the things that I have acquired recently. The yarn trip was definitely a bit of a splurge and not something I do all the time, but I was really happy that we got to go this week, and I am really excited to start knitting with all of it. Now I would like to tell you a little bit more about some of the plans I have for casting on. I just really wanted to finish that little cropped top that I showed you at the very beginning. And after I finish that, and after I show you these yarns, I'm allowed to cast on a few other projects. So I haven't had a pair of socks on the needles recently, so I'm really excited to do that. And I've had this yarn in my collection for a little bit, and at first I thought, because the colors are so summery, I would make a summer sock with it again. And for me a summer sock is basically an ankle sock, because I am indeed a millennial. But I think actually, because of what I was saying earlier as well, I would really like to make longer socks with it actually. And I was also thinking of combining it with this one, because I just love the way these like warm yellows and purples combine together. This one is a bit more of a high twist with a more fractal effect in it. I think it's really lovely. And I think it will work interestingly with this kind of more self-striping effect yarn. And I think, yeah, I think I'll cast this on maybe today or in the very near future at least. Now, one of the other things that I've been doing recently that I've been very excited about is I have finally bit the bullet and I started hand dyeing some. I bought this yarn a little over a year ago, and I think I was not quite in the right frame of mind when I did, because when I bought it, all of these skeins were originally white. And I never knit with white. I never ever do. Even for color work and stuff, I have a really hard time getting myself to use white because it's just not that enjoyable for me to use it. So I finally decided to try my hand at hand dyeing some, because currently they were not being used as it were. And I would really like to use them, but I would like to transform them in a way that make them a bit more exciting for me to actually use them. So I tried hand dyeing for the first time. I got all the stuff that I needed. These were my second skeins that I made, and they turned out pretty much how I wanted them to. I was a little bit surprised when I first started using it because the jar of the dye pigments that I was using for the purple said lilac, and I thought lilac would be more this type of shade, but when it's just pure and it just hits the wool, it turns like a royal, beautiful purple, but not quite what I originally expected. I'm still struggling a little bit with doing more of a speckled dye and making sure that the colors don't bleed that much into each other, but I still think this turned out quite lovely. And I'm also showing you this because it is part of one of the things I want to cast on hopefully pretty soon. I would love to start knitting the Best Vest by James N. Watts. I'm really excited for it. His pattern asks for a larger needle size again though, so that is a bit of a challenge for me. But in this case, I am hoping that if I combine this with mohair and maybe some of my other mohairs, then I will be able to get more up to the gauge that he is recommending for this pattern, because the Best Vest is supposed to be quite oversized and kind of just like thick and luscious, so I do understand why it would be nice to knit it in a higher needle size than I'm used to, and I think that is going to be the general challenge for me in the upcoming month, because my other plans besides the sock knitting also generally involve a higher needle size than, or a larger needle size than I'm actually used to. So we'll see how that goes for me. That actually brings me to my next project, because I don't want to use the entirety of this for that, because I also want to use the Best Vest to knit up a bunch of my mohair leftover scraps and stuff and just make this big, luscious, colorful, blended thing of it. So I also bought this mohair specifically. I am making this little crossover ballerina cardigan. I think this might be also the Life in the Long Grass brand of yarn, but this is a DK weight, and again I tend to not use that much, so I'm trying to kind of challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone, I suppose. And for now also all the patterns I'm choosing tend to have something in it I haven't quite done before yet. So I think this pattern that I have my eye on has, for instance, an I-cord string that I've not knit that before. I don't know how fun it's going to be, but I think it would be nice to try. And originally I was just going to use this, but then I thought to myself, I think I want a little bit more excitement. And I saw Maker B recently. I saw one of the cardigans that she made, and I think it had like also this pink and green combination in it, and this yarn also already has some green in it. So right now my idea is to use these two greens, because this is the Undercover Otter is a fingering weight yarn, and then I want to add the mohair to it to get it closer to a DK weight. And then I want to use this to make all the I-cord edgings of the cardigan, and I think it will be a really nice color combination with the pink. But I'll have to wait and see, and I'm excited to start it though. I think it will be nice. Alright, those were all my new finished projects, my whips, my acquisitions, my plans. I'm really excited to start playing with all this yarn. I'm also really excited for eventually the temperatures to drop a bit more. Today it's a bit gloomy, so this is my favorite type of day. Unfortunately, I think, yes, my tea has gone cold. Devastating. But I'll just make another cup in a bit. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what your upcoming knitting plans are. Bye!